In that time, I thought I was looking for more answers to figure out my issues. Now I see that what I was looking for was for meaning. I was born in Uruguay, South America. Typical middle class family there. I would say I had a nice childhood with my family and big family. Pretty normal standard altogether, but somehow always felt a bit out of place. In that, I kind of like hide this feeling of out of placeness, being an overachiever in several aspects, especially aspects I could feel comfortable academically, later on, job-wise, career. I felt also from a really young age that I had to somehow get away from there. Nothing terrible, just that feeling. That time I kind of collected it to curiosity. So I did that. I finished my studies, my university in Uruguay. I had a decent, steady job, and I was kind of following on my path life of my country. And then I just decided to leave. I moved to Germany, to Berlin, where I lived for 7 years. I started my, let's say, adult life there. I had this kind of idea, which I think is a bit kind of common in the South. My lack of whatever was missing could be filled somehow going to the richer and more full of opportunities north. That's what I did, and that's what I tried to do. Luckily and unluckily, I was kind of successful with it. I never had like high hopes. I didn't want to become a CEO or anything, but it was enough for me to live in a cool city, international, speak different languages, meet people from around the world, have opportunities traveling. I kind of achieved that, and I realized that I was still lacking and I was still missing. And I went into, some years ago, I went to really interesting and not healthy, over-exhausting, overdoing, over-partying, over-traveling, overworking, which left me temporary okay, but also I realized with time that I was getting drained and something was just not good. I was playing with the idea of psychedelics since I was young, especially I don't know why ayahuasca came a lot to me, even when I was in Uruguay, before even I tried any other substance, which then when I moved to Berlin, which is a city which is pretty tolerant with this, I had my experience, but I never got back to psychedelics. The moment I started feeling that something was really like, I was somehow depressed and pretty anxious about things, and I realized that I was not getting better. I come from a family pretty secular, also somehow therapy was never kind of like a real option, but I always been pretty curious and a big reader. So what I did is started like reading. I read first philosophy and then psychology, and from that on I landed in this scene called biohacking a little bit temporarily. There were some interesting things, a lot of pretty interesting things on the other side, but in that there was a time, it was 2016 17, it was this like limitless time, and there were a lot of talking about in that time Adderall and all this stuff. I started reading about that and kind of fantasizing about the idea of trying it, and then in one of those there was also mentioning about LSD and psychedelics. I had my first LSD experience, which was pretty nice and pretty good, and I kind of managed to get into a really interesting psychological position where I saw a lot of my narratives. It was in a really like recreational kind of with friends in nature. But then ayahuasca kept coming, and I was reading it, and I was going around, and then I was playing with the idea for several months, with the idea of kind of like, if this is LSD, then ayahuasca is going to be this on steroids. I'm going to, figure everything out, and I'm going to be finally happy. I wouldn't say in that time I was doing it in a meaningful way. I was just trying out of curiosity and trying to find a solution, and everything changed. But that's how I got to the idea to ayahuasca. I found this website, some people in Denmark doing it. I was living in Berlin back at the time. I was playing with the tab open in my browser for many months until one day I just decided to call, had a nice conversation, felt safe with the answers, and I said, okay, I'm gonna go, and I did it. Back at the time, I thought I was just looking for answers. I was really into my mind. I was kind of loosely grown as a Catholic. Later in my life, I lost touch with religion. Later on, couple of years, 1 year before I started in this process, I completely became an atheist, materialist. I had this experience where I was really like not, I think, okay, this is nothing, it's just all in our minds. That became pretty fast a pretty nihilist and dark road where I was empty. I was looking for something. In that time, I thought I was looking for more answers to figure out my issues. But now I see that what I was looking for was for meaning. I got to that retreat just out of curiosity and trying to figure out some psychological loops I was seeing in myself, and I got way more. I was, as I said before, I was an atheist in that time. I was really not spiritual at all, pretty materialist, like this is what it is, then you die. So I walk into ceremony pretty confident. I was really not nervous. I was really excited about it. I took the medicine. I think not even half an hour later, I was in full process, which was, I guess, until now, and I've been working with the plants from some years, the most visual and the most intense tree process I ever had. So I started feeling it and feeling myself. I was back in my body. I was back there, but somehow also I was feeling from the first moment that it was different from other substances I tried. I was hosting someone in me who was trying to get in, and I just welcome her. I said that it's funny because ayahuasca for me the first time was really like showing me everything that somehow you read in books that should happen on the first ceremony, and the next 10 it was all about purging. So it was kind of like, yeah, here it is, come, and then we're gonna make you purge. But this was like that. I was just there with my eyes open. In one moment I just saw a river open in front of me, and I realized that was the Nile, and I realized that I saw the fishes and the people fishing, and I just started like freaking out because I was like witnessing the birth of civilization. In that moment, I was in a house, country house in Denmark, North Europe, and that all became white marble. And the guide, who was a Danish white guy, just became completely pitch black and dressed in white, and he became a priest. And there were people coming to offer tribute to him, which were not there. So I was started like, wait, I'm like mixing two things. I was really conscious about the whole thing. It was more like an spectator at that moment of the experience, which later on became more vivid. The next thing I know I was lying down and I started touching my face and trying to experiment, and I started feeling that my beard was turning into dust. My face was filled with holes and I was just decomposing. In that moment I got out of my body and I saw myself dead, buried and decomposing. That was the first time that ayahuasca, which presented herself as a blue woman, came to me and started talking, asking me, what do you think? What do you feel? And I was like, well, I mean, I know I'm not dying right now. I'm just seeing something that's going to happen. Say, yeah, but you only have one life, and in this life you have something to do. You need to take care of that. And immediately I got flashes of me over partying, over doing things. I realized how unhealthy my lifestyle was and how I should first of all take care of my health if I wanted to do something. So that was the first thing. Immediately I came up with it. I just stand up, and when I stand up I just became a jaguar. In that time I was really like curious because I was like, wow, this is all happening in my mind. Day after I realized that everyone was like, actually I was somehow in the middle of the room like roaring and trying to bite things. So I became a jaguar and I was in the jungle, and it was just the most beautiful experience. It was the first time I was not seeing it. I was part of the experience in a way. So I was running as a jaguar, I was hunting, I was just in the jungle. That lasted for some time, and I was okay, this is already like 2 days. When is this gonna thing gonna wear off? And in that time I remember I asked someone and they say like, yeah, well, it's just easy. It's just been like 1 hour and a half. And I was like, okay, interesting. From that on, I just relaxed. And when I relaxed, I mean, of course, there was some middle time between all these things. But when I relaxed in one moment, just this big tree came in front of me. And I realized that that tree was connected with me through energy. Everything was connected through me, like the birds, the stones, the grass, and everything was connected back to the tree. And I realized that tree was God to me. That tree was the source. And I was, in that time, someone who didn't think this was even remotely possible. In that moment, ayahuasca came back to me, and she asked me how did I feel about that? And I was just feeling like, yeah, I am such a small, insignificant part of everything. And she was like, yeah, but you have also your thing to do, and it's in this life. After that, I had also a long night of things, pretty heavy visions. I asked someone to take me to the toilet because I couldn't walk well. And this person just became this like old, like Gandalf kind of figure, like big beard, and just smiling at me. And I realized that I knew him. He has been with me my whole life. He was really incredible and special in a way for me. But also it was a lot that I just couldn't even start. I mean, in that time, right, couldn't even start making sense. And that was what me in the time. I was always trying to make sense of things. So it was through the thing. Of course, there was some purge. It was really long, really intense. I didn't need any more ayahuasca. I remember one time I was hearing the guy telling me, breathe, Andres, breathe. And I was like, interesting, because like I only hear this when he tells me telekinesis. And then the day after I realized that he was only telling to me because I was like all over the place. It became a little bit annoying for the people around me, but I came out of it and I was like, okay, this is this has been something that not even the most amazing experience in my life. Even after, I was like, this just didn't happen. This just couldn't have happened. How did I? How? So it was a really tough landing from it, especially after the second ceremony, also where I was purging the whole time, and it was pretty painful and horrible. The biggest learning was that this is there. That was life transforming for me. That there is such a, call it whatever you want, subconscious, other worlds, God, the source, but that's there. That for me was real. And I was like saying to later, like, it's really hard to keep being an atheist when you have talk with God. I don't believe myself special or anything. It was just like, it's there in all of us. All of us. It was for me crazy to see that was there. There were many other, as I said, like more straightforward, and I think again ayahuasca was really carrying on that to really put in me a lot of information at once about my lifestyles, about my purpose. There was something I didn't know at that time. What was it? I'm still figuring out right now, but I knew there was, and that changed everything, because from that time on, my life, then I learned all what's about integration and how hard it was. Like the weeks after were terrible, were really hard for me to learn back, to put everything into my framework of reality, which was clearly not working anymore. Had a pretty intense freak out even a couple of times the week after. But with time, integration, help from many people, I managed to make transformative changes, or better say, I planted transformative seeds that then after all, with years and work, and a lot of different kind of work, brought me to where I am now, which is a way more healthier, full of purpose, and meaningful life, freer also. I didn't even know the integration was something. This retreat was good in the way that at least they were sending some emails to follow up with some activities and grounding exercises and stuff, and everyone was available for call, but still, like, I was really freaking out. Like, my process continued for days after. Life sent me a therapist, was in that time needed. A friend of mine came to see me after many months without seeing and said, like, hey, I'm just coming from my therapist around the corner. And she was great. And she also had knowledge about this. So we worked through together, and I worked with her for a year and a half, integrating this and my following experiences. And then I realized the importance of this, that there's something, I'm quoting someone, I didn't come up with this, but it's like the plants just put seeds on you. Then what you do with them is the real change or not. So I realized that I took more space from the things. I did a second retreat, and then I started working with mushrooms, but always trying to keep space. And then times I have used, and then they hit me back. I learned a lot about integration. I did workshops and therapy. I realized that was the little thing I had to do. That was my little part to help people find help, and to help myself finding help, because I was like, it's so easy somehow in Europe to find retreat centers, but then to find a therapist or a coach or someone who wants to talk with you about this and have sessions with you, that's a different story. The overall impact that psychedelics have had in my life has been huge. My life has changed. Awareness is one, consciousness about it. One thing I definitely feel myself with all my work with psychedelics and through the shamanic path in a way, I'm freer from my own narratives. I'm freer from my own stuff. That makes me just a better person. Someone who is more humble, someone who knows how many stuff I have on me, and that's fine, and we all do. So also more compassionate against myself. I do dearly recommend and believe that integration and the psychedelic experience begin with the preparation. And there are many ways for many different people. I don't think there is one workbook. And a good thing of this world also is that we are seeing that we don't have to have a golden rule for everyone. But going into this experience with a lot of preparation, which can be information, can be grounding, can be intention setting, also going through someone who can tell you maybe it's not a good idea to go there. It's vital, because these medicines are life transforming. And these medicines are super powerful, but not doing it in the right moment and without respect, they can be also pretty challenging, and they can be also putting you in a worse space than you were before. So preparing and taking the time overall, the time to go through it. You can do it on your own. You can look for resources. I have a website for that, but it's not even that. Like, people just need to take time to consider this and be aware that we as society, we have this kind of superhero complex. I can't do it. It's fine. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. And it's okay. If it's not, but you prepare well and you have contention waiting for you also at home after the retreat. The challenging experience are the most beautiful ones in the long term, the ones that can transform really your life. But if you didn't take the time to prepare yourself before and to somehow have a support net when you come back, it can be pretty bad, and it can even put you in a worse place than you were before.